Hey everyone, I'm Mike Zajko and welcome to the Token Warrant, your insider's guide to the biggest deals in crypto.
I'm Regan, Bozman. Each episode we chat with top VCs and founders to bring you stories and strategies from behind the scenes. Thanks for joining.
Hey everyone, I'm Mike Zajko. This is the Token Warrant.
I'm Regan Bozman, and thanks for being here. We're recording live from Brussels, which is a treat for us. We're in kind of this little box recording, usually on Zoom, so this is a lot more fun. How's ETHCC week been for both of y'all?
Yeah, it's been fun. Mainly, just catching up with portfolio founders and getting introduced to new projects. Yeah, a lot of side events, a lot of things going on, but really nice to hang with people in person and not just on computer screens.
Yeah, it's been great for us as well. We had a target list of people we want to speak to, and so far it's been great. We've been meeting those teams, but also just hanging out with people, forming relationships. We had a few interesting talks today as well. So we had Conrad battling it out with Gnome from Alchemy on the 7579, 6900 debate, which I'm sure we can talk about later. But it's been a really productive week.
What do you guys think pairs for Brussels for ETHCC in the future?
I've seen a lot of people complaining about Brussels, but I arrived here almost like a week and a half ago because we had our team offsite here last week.
Aren't crypto people always complaining about?
I like it.
They love to hate Denver. That's like the city
That's
number.
so true. That is very true.
Do you're offsite in Brussels proper?
Yeah, we had our IC offsite a little bit south of the city center, but we tried to do them around a big conference so people can stay the week after.
Nice. That sounds like
We
fun.
asked this in the last podcast, but is there anything you guys want to do while you're here? Or are you going to eat just a bunch of waffles, French fries, or Belgian fries?
I've had my fill of waffles and seafood. It's interesting that seafood is really popular here because it's not on the coastline. But some great lobster.
I've had a ton of mussels, which I didn't expect. Usually that's a south of France thing. So I'm not sure if that's a Brussels thing or whether we've just walked into two random restaurants that really focus on mussels.
I think it is. I think it's a Belgian thing.
Okay, very
nice. Well, that was a good background. I think would love to start with you, the project, just the story of how you started working on it. And then we can kind of talk more about 1KX, how you all met and the round. But let's start there.
Yeah, sure. So, Conrad and I, we've been building together for a little while now, so just over 2 years. We initially we were working on what I would say, it was a very, opportunistic project. We had, several theses about how Web3 could impact different businesses, whether it be marketplaces or general B2C businesses, and we were, hacking on projects, building out clientele. And again, we just got told, but can you just make the user onboarding experience better?
And you guys started working together just at hackathons, right? That's how you two met?
Well, so Conrad was actually working on like a solo project. I was still at my full-time job. So I was a product manager at a Web2 company, one of the biggest marketplaces in Europe. And we got connected. It was actually through LinkedIn. It's not very exciting. And I was looking for a co-founder and I wanted to brainstorm and kind of just hang out and give product advice and, not kind of have any agenda or anything like that, but just someone to spar with, which I thought was cool. And we just got along really, really well to a point where I think my fiance was maybe a bit jealous of how much time I was spending with this.
Just to understand, so you're working in your normal job, and then on weekends you're just DMing random people on LinkedIn.
So,
hey, do you want to work?
I was definitely DMing people. I'm not going to deny that, but in this case, Conrad DM'd me.
Okay.
So that it was. I'm not sure how he found my profile. But it was quite serendipitous. It was really cool, and we just got along really well. And like I said, we had similar philosophies about how Web3 could have an impact on the world, on different companies, and we just started hacking, and we got to account abstraction because it felt like the natural solution to a problem that we were running into. We just weren't excited about the problem that we were being told to fix by our clients. User onboarding, although it's super important and we are passionate about it, it was just very saturated. And so we actually entered research mode for a little while. We actually had a guy join us during that research mode as well. We were very concentrated on let's just spend time digging into smart accounts. And we just ran into a ton of problems building with the existing implementations that were out there. And that's how we came to modularity. And then it was Conrad's idea to really push forward with building what was at the time the first 47 native modular account. He built that at East Denver in 2023. And then that kind of kickstarted us and we fully pivoted into the account abstraction space.
Awesome. I want to talk about smart accounts and account abstraction and all of that. But Nish, maybe you could start, we'd love to just get your introduction, how you started working in crypto, ended up at 1KX, and yeah, we can go from there.
Yeah, sure. So I got into crypto around 2017. I was living in Bangkok at the time, and this was right before the ICO boom. And I wasn't technical, so I just, read a lot of, blog posts about the space and the technology and started my own blog on the side, doing explainers on Bitcoin and Ethereum. So a lot of writing. And yeah, and then I wanted to do my own NFT project. I was inspired by CryptoKitties. This was around 20. So I went to, teach myself Solidity and sort of full stack dApp development and got hands-on experience with developer tooling at the time for EVM. And then, yeah.
Wait, did you ever release the NFT collection?
I mean, it was just on testnet.
Okay.
Yeah, it was at a time where with every pitch we did, we had to explain what NFTs were and why it's exciting. Yeah, I mean, if we had launched it in 2021, that would have been a really good time for that project. But I mean, either way, learned a lot and, learned Solidity skills, which helped me find some, freelancing jobs in the Ethereum ecosystem. So I did Solidity development for some DeFi and Web3 social projects. And during the height of COVID, I got really involved in the DAO ecosystem, Metacartel and Metagamma Delta. And this is where I met Peter Pan, who's the consumer partner at 1KX now. And he discovered the blog that I was writing a few years back. And he was like, hey, 1KX is kind of looking for someone with this sort of skill set to communicate the thesis that the fund has on various markets, publish investment memos. So that's what I was originally brought on to the fund for. But yeah, I've been with 1KX now for about 3 years.
Nice. Yeah, Peter Pan is an illustrious
human.
I remember talking to him a few years ago about Metacartel, and he definitely was way ahead of the trend on investment DAOs, and he has definitely pioneered a lot of that.
Yeah,
a lot of that stuff. Cool. Well, I guess just diving into Rhinestone, maybe what was kind of the journey from just testing out at these hackathons to V1 of the product? We first met probably June, July of last year, about a year ago.
Yeah.
How did this kind of go from hackathon to what it is today?
Yeah. So the initial product concept was essentially a modular wallet where I guess the narrative that we were leaning into is there are these smart accounts being built. There are all these different features that can be enabled by smart accounts, but the monolithic account design is quite limited in terms of how customizable it is, not only for users but for developers. And just in general, there is no way back then, it's starting to emerge now, there was no way for a user to say, well, I want this type of setup with my wallet, and I can draw from all these existing kind of pieces that had been built out there. And so, yeah, the first product kind of narrative was this modular wallet, and it was a wallet that had our account underneath, and then we were building the modules that the user could then use to mod their account. And then the evolution of that was, well, it's going to take a lot of time to build these modules and features ourselves, but how do we introduce third-party developers? And then we started to think more deeply about actually modules enable really unique products in a trustless way that's just not possible with EOAs, with smart accounts not in the picture. And then, we started to think more about, well, how could you embed an app store into the wallet? And we kind of played around with the snaps, the MetaMask snaps thesis, but, more about having not just a modular front end, but also a modular back end being the account. And then we kind of stumbled upon the problem of, well, if you have all these third-party developers building modules, how can you actually trust that those modules are secure? And at the same time, ERC 6900 was launched, and it was becoming clearer and clearer to us that accounts are probably not the most defensible part of the stack, that there's going to be many implementations of accounts. And actually then the problem is, well, how do you get interoperability across all these accounts? And so we very quickly made a small pivot, which I guess ended up being big in a way, but we made a small pivot to focus entirely on the infrastructure and tooling that's required for an interoperable open marketplace of modules and smart account native applications. So we moved entirely away from the account, although we do spend a ton of time working with account vendors and co-developing out those accounts. We worked closely with Safe on the Safe 7579 adapter, which is essentially an account on top of the Safe. And then we've also been working super closely with Biconomy on the Nexus account, which is coming soon. And our 7579 reference implementation has been used to inspire other accounts being built by whether it's wallets or other account vendors.
Yeah, I mean, the wallet space has definitely grown a ton over the last few years. I guess maybe just like contextualizing it for users you're familiar with like every wallet standard that exists in Ethereum today. Most of our users probably aren't.
Yes.
Today we all, let's just say like use MetaMask. We kind of have like a similar wallet experience. What does the future look like where kind of like people are able to kind of like have these modular backends and front ends? Like, like what does that kind of like look like in practice, do you think?
Yeah, maybe I can start and then Nish, if you want to jump in. Yeah, so today you have two account types, like if I'm to generalize. You have externally owned accounts, typically called EOAs. This is what MetaMask, Phantom, all these kind of classic wallets are under the hood. And they're very rigid in their design. There is no, it's not programmable in any way, shape, or form. The public-private key are hard-coded together. And so, if you lose your keys, you lose your crypto, all those types of things, just the issues around security and the vulnerability of that account kind of stems from this design. And then in the other bucket, you have contract accounts, which we typically call smart accounts. And smart accounts are a contract that can store state for a user. And in the context of a modular smart account, also stores this mapping to these external smart contracts, and these smart contracts hold logic, which can then augment the feature set or append new features to that smart account. And so, today most users still use EOAs, probably because MetaMask and those products are quite sticky, but smart accounts are definitely on the rise. And our core thesis is that modular smart accounts will be the dominant interface of Web3. And there are ERCs and EIPs that are pushing us in that direction, to a point where I personally believe the switch will happen and users may not even know about it, but EOAs will kind of become a thing of the past and a relic of a time before.
Yeah, that's a good categorization of, splitting it between EOAs and smart accounts. And account abstraction as a whole is a movement to make smart accounts the norm instead of using these EOAs. Another way you can categorize them is standalone wallets versus more embedded wallets. And embedded wallets is something that's an emergent wallet category over the past few years. When we say wallets, a lot of people think of them as wallets as products, which is, users searching for them on the App Store or, Chrome extension store and download them and interact with them as a portfolio manager. And then now, with embedded wallets, there are wallets as infrastructure, right? So the users or customers of wallet as infrastructure products are not end users, but dApp developers or developers in general who want to onboard users by deploying wallets on their behalf. And this is where, zero dev Biconomy comes in, where the user might not know that they're using a Biconomy or zero dev wallet, but instead it's a part of the dApp experience of onboarding.
Yeah, I think the distinction there is super important. One way that we like to categorize, maybe, sorry to add the layers, but when we say wallets, we typically mean the front end, the way that the graphical interface or the interface for the user. And then when we talk about accounts, we are talking about the underlying, the back end. And so, for embedded wallets, you can have embedded wallets that are EOAs with MPC on top, or you can have embedded wallets that are smart accounts. So just to add more complexity.
Yeah, Kurt, maybe because we're going to kind of segue into the fundraise. This is a kind of the bleeding edge of what's going on in crypto right now. There's constant change. So you guys were doing research. At what point did you decide, okay, we're going to move forward with this idea and it's time to go out and start the fundraising process? Because this is the second round that you guys have raised. So maybe just talk through the fundraising journey. This is the Token Warrant. So we do talk about fundraising here.
Sure. So, okay, I'm just trying to think where to start. In terms of you asked why did we decide to go ahead with the modular account abstraction project or the modular smart accounts. The key insight or pain point that we had when we were in research mode was that this issue of slow iteration, of feature iteration over monolithic accounts. So writing Solidity and smart contracts is not much closer, but it is somewhat closer to building hardware. The development cycles are slower. You front load a lot of your testing, a lot of your security work, and then when you launch, it's immutable and the upgrade paths are much slower. And modularity was just a very logical thing to us to allow the wallet space to evolve much faster. And so that was originally what red pilled us. And then this idea of of smart accounts then transforming into an open platform where not just the core developer team of Safe builds the account and builds the feature set, but any developer says, well, I want to tap into programmable validity or validation and programmable execution at the account level and add a feature and actually like bring my product to life in a way that was otherwise not possible. So yeah, that was kind of what drove us on the project.
And then maybe just like, obviously I think want to talk about the fundraising and kind of make that the center, but like maybe just like, I think there's like probably around ETH Denver last year, right? You all put a small round together last summer.
Yes.
Like how did that come together? And then maybe kind of like, how did you think about what milestones you needed to like want to go out and do this round?
Yeah, so when we came out of ETH Denver, we felt like we had the core team together to move forward with a prototype. And so we didn't want to get bogged down doing a large, like a large VC round with long due diligence process and negotiation around the terms, et cetera. And so just to be clear, at this stage, it was myself, it was Conrad, and then we also brought in Zero Knots, who we actually found on Twitter. He was exploring modular account abstraction.
It's another famous DM.
Yeah. The funny thing about Zero Knots is that I DM'd him and Conrad DM'd him at the same time, which is really funny. But he originally joined us to work on a grant that we had from EF. Originally, the grant was to build a modular account, and we weren't sure if it was going to become a standard or not. And then, after Alchemy released their standard for the account, we focused the grant on the registry, and he was working with us on that, and then he joined us full time. And so we had like the core nucleus of people that we felt we needed to move forward, and we just wanted to focus on shipping. We wanted to get money in the door to like obviously pay for Zero Knots was not free, and bring in like one or two other key roles. And so that was largely the motivation there. We were also like still like we were exploring. Like we weren't like we didn't have a huge amount of clarity on what exactly it was going to be. We just felt like this was solving a problem for developers, and that there was a really kind of cool product narrative that was starting to evolve. And then, we built the module registry, and we made a lot of progress on just what can be done with modules and showcasing that to the ecosystem. And then we launched ERC 7579, which is our minimal standard for modular accounts. I'm sorry to keep throwing ERC numbers out there. And it was at that stage that we felt, okay, we're starting to now get real momentum from key players in the space around what we're building. And so we wanted to go out and raise a proper round to build out the team to execute on the roadmap that we developed. And, the roadmap is still 100% evolving like any early stage startup. But that was like the general evolution of going from that small, what we initially taglined as an angel round, and we had no intention of VCs coming in. How we met 1KX was actually through Peter Pan. So I reached out to a friend who's now at Animoca, and I said, hey, we're raising an angel round. Do you know any angels? He's like, no, I don't know any, but I know a few guys in VC. Should I DM them? And I was like, okay, sure. Like, why not? And then we spoke to 1KX, Chris and Nish. And then we actually got connected through another friend to you guys as well. And that was fairly late in the round. We actually had no intention of bringing VCs in. And so we just felt so aligned with both you guys and with 1KX that it felt like it would be a shame to not start building that relationship early. So we increased the size of the round slightly and then kicked that off, and it paid in dividends because we worked closely with you guys throughout that early development cycle. Lattice was super impactful on the partnership side, 1KX super impactful on like the technical side and giving us advice on how should we strategically place ourselves in the ecosystem. So that paid off in a big way. And then, doing the next round and kind of upping the stakes just felt like the very natural progression.
Awesome. What's the headline on this current round?
The numbers?
Yeah, like who's...
Yeah, so we raised 5 mil. 1KX led the round. We had Lattice joining. We had CoinFund join, which is a new investor that we're very excited to work with. We had pretty much every investor from the prior round double down, bar a couple of angels who did write large. And then we had a whole suite of strategic investors come on board this round as well, to which like Nish and the team at 1KX were incredibly helpful when it came to that. So Alchemy is one of our strategic investors, which for people who are close to the modular AA space might be shocked to hear that. But behind scenes, we are very collaborative. Circle joined the round, ZK Sync joined the round, Cyber joined the round. So a really interesting nucleus of people, and then some great angels from, Biconomy, WorldCoin, Wallet Connect. So we were really happy with how the round came together, and it was like, another proof point that what we're building is meaningful to the wallet space. And so we're super excited to continue shipping.
Nish, maybe for you guys on the fundraising round, you've had the opportunity to get to know the team for well over a year. So from a diligence perspective, you were already quite close with them. But for this round, like what got you guys over the line? What were the things that you saw on the team and the progress in the space? Because I think what's challenging here is it's really evolving right before our eyes. So it's, sometimes in crypto, it's like building a house on quicksand. Like you're doing one thing and then all of a sudden the market moves in a different direction. Like how could you get comfortable with the space and then Rhinestone within that?
Right. Well, during the time of the pre-seed, we were doing a lot of like just independent deep dives into this market already. Around the time of ETH Denver, the entry point contract for 4337 went live on mainnet, and there was a lot of developer attention around account abstraction. And we saw Rhinestone and the modular account infrastructure as like an emergent, interesting layer in the stack. And no one was tackling the problem of, interoperability and DevX for people to build modules that was able to deploy on the different smart account standards at the time. And we put a small check into the pre-seed and was able to monitor and work closely with the Rhinestone team as they prepare themselves for the seed round. And we were really impressed with just the ability, like the developer evangelism that they were able to do around standards. I think with middleware, it's not just about the tech, right? It's about getting different projects on board to come to consensus and build on one standard. And, just communications around how to use your tools like SDKs and just like being really responsive to feedback for that, because the thesis still has yet to be proven out, right, around how modules are going to play out. But just the progress that they've made between the pre-seed and the seed round, especially getting big players, vendors like Biconomy and ZeroDev and OKX on board to launch 7579 was really like bullish for us.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think maybe just like taking a step back. I think, was it you or someone else at 1KX who published this like very long like wallet, like everything that happened?
Oh, that was me.
Okay,
that was me. Yeah.
Maybe you would love to just like hear, how does like 1KX kind of approach like thesis formation in a category? And then how does that lead to like investments? And then maybe like would love to kind of dig deeper and specifically like your views on like wallets and value accrual there coming out of that research, and maybe kind of how that led to y'all getting excited about Rhinestone.
So it starts off with just talking to everyone in the space and just, trying to place them on like an ecosystem map, which is kind of the, like the headline sort of header image of most of my blog posts that a lot of people gravitate towards. But yeah, it's just like making sense of the market and making a sense of what individual players like role is in the market and how these categories will consolidate or evolve in the future. And like modular account dev tools is where like Rhinestone was like solely in that category. So a lot of the thinking was around, okay, how could this evolve and like what sort of layers can they later expand into once DevX and interoperability is solved for. And so, yeah, talking to everyone and talking to the customers of each of these teams. So during the Rhinestone diligence process, we spoke to account vendors that were looking to use them, and also module developers that were looking to use, use a module kit. And I think we spoke to, Blockfence and Circle to understand the use cases, like how they were seeing modules as a new, modular accounts as the new distribution platforms for their products. And then how ZeroDev and Biconomies, the ZeroDevs and Biconomies of the world, were seeing how they can incorporate the module store into their wallets, embedded wallets.
On that topic, I mean, you mentioned kind of talking to like some of their customers to understand how they're planning on using them. Would love to understand like how 1KX runs the diligence process, like how you get to an investment decision, and then maybe any relevant details from that process with Rhinestone that you can share. I think would also be super interesting.
Yeah. So we do have a framework for due diligence. Talking to customers, integration partners is one. If the product is not live, it's about developer evangelism, like how active they are in the forums, how many people are aware of them, maybe SDK install metrics, and just like how they've been working with their discovery, like design partners in thinking about the space.
Yeah. Cool. And I guess you when you kind of thought about like putting this round together, like how did you think about what investors you wanted? Like, was it, okay, these people have a lot of like different investments in kind of other parts of like the wallet stack, or like potential integration partners? Like, just curious kind of how you prioritized putting the round together and, what you looked for in investors.
Yeah, sure. So I think maybe starting with why 1KX is quite helpful there. So we obviously spent a lot of time working with 1KX before the seed round. So we were kind of we had the insight of what it would be like to work with them. But what 1KX showed that we thought they could just provide in spades above all the other investors that we spoke to was their technical understanding of the space. And 1KX does have probably some of the best experience within the wallet stack. When you look at the work they've done with Safe, with the LIP protocol, which is obviously MPC networks, but there's a lot of overlap there. Wallet Connect is another major one, and the list goes on. But then also we're building open source. And so there is it is very different to traditional businesses and how you think about value accrual and how you capture attention. And we were seeing a lot of parallels with Safe and with Wallet Connect and these other teams that have thought about how a token could play a role in their network. And to be clear, it's still very much a castle in the sky, which I think is Chris's expression. But having that experience we thought would be super valuable. And then the relationships they have off the back of that and how we were kind of fitting into a new niche in that category and looking to build with all those partners. And then in terms of the rest of the round, I would say we were quite targeted when thinking about who to bring into the round and for what reason. Lattice in particular, you guys have been amazing when it comes to BD and your network in the space. And we'd collaborated so well since the pre-seed that it was a no-brainer for us. CoinFund has a large US presence. We're an EU based, we're based primarily in London. Conrad and I are in London. So our coverage is mostly Europe. And so having that kind of, I guess, that door kind of opening up into the US and having people in an entity to evangelize people around Rhinestone in the US, we thought was a really interesting avenue. And then beyond that, when it comes to the strategics and the angels, we were thinking mainly about who are the teams that we want to build with and build tight connections with, and that's how we prioritized, specifically the strategics.
You've mentioned a couple times, both of you, in this conversation around developer evangelism. And what's the joke about a standard like, hey, we have too many standards. Here's another one.
Exactly.
Take my standard. How do you go about doing it? What are some of the tactics, and what did you guys see from Rhinestone that captured your attention and their ability to rally developers around yet another standard?
I was also just independently scouring around the ETH Magicians forum where a lot of these standards are discussed, and I saw Conrad and Kurt's participation in a lot of them, and just going into details about how 7579 works and breaking down the differences between, or the trade-offs between this and other standards that might have been in discussion. I think a lot of it is education, developer education, and code examples, open source examples of how it could be used, and also things like gas estimation, if it's for example how much does it cost to deploy this module versus others. So it's just transparency and being responsive to devs looking to build on the standard.
Yeah, sum it up.
Yeah, maybe some things to add, or I guess how we think about it. when strategizing or when like having internal meetings around these things. When it came to ERC 7579, we wanted to try and pull as many learnings from what had already been built in the space. And so we very early on pulled those stakeholders together. It was during Dev Connect. We had a bunch of meetings. At that stage, we didn't even plan on writing a standard. What we were doing is we were pulling together a playbook on some recommended changes for those vendors to become more compatible, just in general, so that our tech, we could essentially deprecate a bunch of complexity and improve interoperability of modules. And their response was, this should be a standard. And so it was really drawn out of us, and it was very collaborative. So I'd say that was definitely a key thing. And then, yeah, we take the same approach with building with developers in general. We try to like have strong opinions, but very loosely held. We like to iterate as quickly as possible, try and take on as much feedback as possible, and just be as flexible as we can to within reason, but to try and meet the needs of our developers and continue to kind of learn from that and push the space forward. What we found early on is dog fooding was super useful. So we did continue to work on the wallet product, not because we thought that it was going to be this amazing product, just because it was an amazing way for us to test and learn. And that allowed us to empathize more with developers across the right verticals. And I think a lot of teams do this. It's definitely not unique. And that allowed us to empathize more. It allowed us to focus on the problems that we think will have more of an impact. And it also allowed us to showcase and inspire. One thing we found super early on is we were amongst a small party of individuals that really understood what modules could do and what they are, which I still think is like very confused. I still have a lot of teams coming to me and say, hey, like, let's do a module for this. I'm like, yeah, that's just a front-end integration that doesn't need to be on-chain. And so being able to showcase and actually kind of, I guess, inspire developers in that way was also really, really useful.
Yeah. I think documentation is probably low-hanging fruit, but you'd be surprised on how many sort of dev tools and infra projects don't have clear documentation. And then just things like being responsive in Telegram groups.
Go to lots of crypto conferences.
And I mean, like just not building in silo, right? I think events like this are a really good way to accelerate the conversations that would take weeks and months if we were doing like async weekly calls, and not everyone can show up to that, and it's like a lot of back and forth. But yeah, just like Wallet Connect has recently been doing a really good job of like getting people together in real life, actual builders, to do roundtables on really specific topics that pertains to them. And and being present there has a really big impact.
And now that you've put together this $5 million round and you kind of scaled the team, when you're thinking about the go-to-market from here, there was this one era, which was getting to this standard. Now is it more around rallying more customers, additional developers? Like, how do you think about the expansion process from, over the next 12 months?
Yeah, so I think standard adoption is still important. There's still like a long ways to go there. Outside of that, so we I guess when this comes out, we will have launched what we're calling Protocol V0, but it is very focused on the module security problem, the module registry, which actually becomes like a core like shilling point for distribution and discovery of modules. And then we've launched a set of modules that we believe are like highly generalizable components that can be reused across different verticals. So the obvious ones are pass keys, so allowing a user to sign a transaction with their biometrics using the secure enclave of their device. Session keys is another major one. So we've been working very closely with Biconomy on what we're calling a smart session manager. Wallet Connect will be one of the first to adopt this and to distribute this product to the applications building with Wallet Connect. But then beyond that, our focus, so module development might be something that we pick up, but only in cases where we think it can accelerate a very interesting and compelling vertical on smart accounts, with the goal of increasing the adoption of our tooling, of the registry, and of modular smart accounts in general. And so we have a couple of verticals that we're paying very close attention to and doing more research in that space. I'm happy to talk about it. But yeah, it's really about how do we get interesting applications out there where people say, well, wow, that's amazing. I can't believe that's an on-chain product that's completely trustless. How did they do that? and then they say, okay, well, what's Rhinestone doing that's so interesting that it enabled that? And then that kind of draws attention to what we're doing.
Well, we're almost at time, but I think maybe like a good kind of ending point. Would love to just hear like, what's coming down the line? Like, what are you most excited for in the next 6 months? Maybe like you with Rhinestone, and then maybe like talking about wallets just more generally.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, wallets more generally. So over the past year, we've been seeing the traction and adoption play out around 4.3.7 and account abstraction. Now that most of the infrastructure is live, I think the adoption there has been slower than I think a lot of the devs building in this ecosystem anticipated, given like the hype around it. But I think it's just about like finding dApps and finding the use cases and like what are the feature unlocks through account abstraction that is actually meaningful to users. I think over the past year, we discovered that to be things like gas abstraction, right? And so a lot of dApps were able to onboard like the long tail of users that way. Something that's been talked about this time around at ETHCC is network and chain abstraction. So the idea is that users don't need to know what chain they're on or don't need to onboard to a new chain with the native gas token. And the account or like the policy network or infrastructure underneath can abstract that away for them, essentially turning bridges from dApps to the underlying infrastructure that allows you to do whatever on a new chain. So I think this is something that's gonna play out similar to account abstraction, where with the chain abstraction infrastructure will discover the features like that users gravitate towards. So this can be like cross-chain NFT checkouts. It could be like swaps. It could be like getting new tokens. Yeah. So excited to see where modules play a role there as well.
Yeah, I would say, it's definitely a hot topic right now, but I completely agree. Chain abstraction is super interesting. In terms of where modules can play a role, we do think it's going to be pivotal at the permission layer of the framework, and we're exploring different ways to use modules with different trust trade-offs, to be honest, and we'll probably release more on that soon, or maybe it's already out by the time this releases. And then I would say like maybe the one other like major exciting thing that has maybe quietened down a little bit is EIP 7702. Sorry to throw another one out there.
You're like the encyclopedia of EIPs.
I don't know. I'd probably give that crown to Conrad, but I know my fair share. Essentially, this is a newer EIP that will be included in the next hard fork, and it will enable EOAs to adopt smart account features. And so we're like continuously thinking about, well, what will this product or this specific module use case look like in the context of 7702, and how can we just bring it to any user? And I do think that will be, I don't think it's going to be an all at once kind of thing, right? Where everything just suddenly changes all at once. But I think it is maybe the start of an acceleration, and how quickly that acceleration happens is probably unknown. But I think that it could be quite quick if we suddenly start building products that are uniquely enabled by that are very compelling. Chain abstraction, I think, is going to be a big one. The other one is permissions. I think session keys, which is sometimes just called permissions, but this is a huge unlock for UX, and what we're doing with Biconomy and with Wallet Connect, I think is going to unleash like a lot of new interesting use cases where you can essentially delegate to trusted third parties to do very scoped things on your behalf, whether it's AI agents or whatever other kind of sci-fi thing you can dream up.
Just give an agent all my private keys.
yeah,
that's
exactly.
like a great idea. No, it's a really exciting vision. I feel like right now Ethereum has sort of been in this like period of fragmentation, all these different L2s and bridging solutions, and it's just, I think the end vision of like abstracting kind of all of that back together is really exciting. Thank you so much for joining us both. If people want to follow you, like reach out, learn more, what's the best place to find you guys?
Twitter is probably the best place. I'm at Nichanan K.
Yeah, Twitter's a great place for me as well. I'm Kurt__Larsen. Telegram also works. It's the same, but only one underscore.
Wow, giving out the Telegram. Bold move here, Kurt.
Let's go.
We might have to delete that. Well, yeah, thank you again. Hopefully we'll see you around Brussels and see you online.
Awesome.
Thank you.
for having me.
Appreciate it.